April 16th is marked by several significant events throughout history. Here are 10 of the most notable events that occurred on April 16th. On April 16, 73 AD, the Siege of Masada ended after a group of Jewish rebels, including women and children, committed mass suicide rather than surrender to the Roman army. The siege is seen as a symbol of Jewish resistance and has been commemorated in modern times. On April 16, 1746, the Battle of Culloden was fought near Inverness, Scotland, marking the final confrontation of the Jacobite Rising of 1745. The battle resulted in a decisive victory for the British Army and marked the end of the Jacobite Rebellion. On April 16, 1862, the Battle of Fort Pillow was fought during the American Civil War, resulting in a Confederate victory. The battle is notable for the high number of casualties, particularly among Union troops, many of whom were African American. On April 16, 1917, Vladimir Lenin, leader of the Bolsheviks, returned to Russia after years in exile. His return marked a turning point in the Russian Revolution, which would eventually lead to the establishment of the Soviet Union. On April 16, 1945, the Battle of Berlin began during World War II, as Soviet troops began their final assault on the city. The battle was one of the most significant of the war, and resulted in the capture of the German capital by Soviet forces. On April 16, 1963, Martin Luther King Jr. wrote his famous Letter from Birmingham Jail, in which he defended his nonviolent protests and called for an end to segregation and racial injustice in the United States. On April 16, 1972, the Apollo 16 mission was launched, sending astronauts John Young and Charles Duke to the Moon. The mission was the fifth manned landing on the Moon and marked the beginning of the end of the Apollo program. On April 16, 1995, a truck bomb exploded outside the Alfred P. Mora Federal Building in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, killing 168 people and injuring over 600 others. The bombing was carried out by domestic terrorists Timothy McVeigh and Terry Nichols. On April 16, 2007, a shooting occurred at Virginia Tech University in Blacksburg, Virginia, resulting in the deaths of 32 people and injuring 17 others. The shooting was the deadliest school shooting in U.S. history at the time. On April 16, 2014, a ferry carrying over 400 people sank off the coast of South Korea, resulting in the deaths of over 300 people, most of whom were high school students. The disaster was attributed to negligence and corruption in the South Korean government and prompted significant public outrage and calls for reform.